instrumentally to generate living entities without being conditioned by such activities. Purport: Brahmaji does not want to become a speculator, dependent on the strength of his personal knowledge, and conditioned to material bondage. Everyone should know in clear consciousness that one is, in the execution of all activities, an instrument. A conditioned soul is instrumental in the hands of the external energy, Gunamayi Maya, or the illusory energy of the Lord, and in the liberated stage, the living entity is instrumental to the will of the personality of Godhead directly. To be instrumental to the direct will of the Lord is the natural constitutional position of the living entity, whereas to be an instrument in the hands of the illusory energy of the Lord is material bondage for the living entity. In that conditioned state, the living entity speculates on the absolute truth and his different activities, but in the unconditioned stage, the living entity directly receives knowledge from the Lord, and such a liberated soul acts flawlessly without any speculative habit. The Bhagavad Gita 10:10-11 confirms emphatically that the pure devotees who are constantly engaged in the loving transcendental service of the Lord are directly advised by the Lord, so much so that the devotee unwaveringly makes progress on the path back to Godhead. Pure devotees of the Lord are therefore not proud of their definite progress, whereas the non-devotee speculator is in the darkness of illusory energy and is very much proud of his misleading knowledge based on speculation without any definite path. Lord Brahma wanted to be saved from that pitfall of pride, although he was posted in the most exalted position within the universe. Bhagavach chikshitam aham koravani hi atindritaha neham manaha prajasargam vadyayam yad anugrahat. Let's repeat this translation. Please tell me, so that I may be taught, in the matter, by the instruction of the personality of Godhead, and may thus act instrumentally to generate living entities without being conditioned by such activities. Okam karoti bhachalam bangalanayate girim yakvipattaraham bande Sri Gurun Dinacharanam. Lord Brahma is the Son of God. The Christians have this phrase referring to Jesus Christ. But we see that Lord Brahma is directly the son of Lord Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. But he was not born in an ordinary manner. He appeared on the lotus that grows up from the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and opens. So therefore Brahma is also called Swayambhu, which means self-born, because he's not born from the womb of a woman. And so he's directly the son of Lord Vishnu, and he's the creator, and he is the Adi Kavi, the original reciter of the Vedic literatures, and he's the first Brahmana. So he has all these natural qualifications. But this verse that we've heard today is really very, very important, very nectarian, because here Lord Brahma is expressing his full dependence on the instruction of the Lord. He's not assuming for himself a special position. We can certainly understand if Brahma would think, well, I'm the direct son of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. I'm the first living entity who appears in the universe. I am endowed with the mission of creation, and so on and so forth. So it is understandable that Brahma might think himself to be a special person, and therefore might think himself qualified just to give his own idea. But we can see he's very much insisting that he does not want to fall into that trap. He wants to be, as he says here, instructed directly by the personality of Godhead. And then he goes on to say that there will be a proof, just like yesterday we were at this university. So in universities, they not only give instruction, but they have a system of proving that the student has acquired the knowledge that they're trying to teach, and that is, of course, examination. So Brahma is stating here that he will also be examined, because he will act as an instrument of the Lord in the matter of creation. And so how he does this service to Krishna, that will be the proof of his learning, how much he has learned from the Lord. So in other words, Brahma is not satisfied to leave the instruction that he's asking the Lord to give him. He's not satisfied just to leave it on the theoretical platform. Please tell me everything, and then I'll sit tightly and be mystical and be absorbed in some inner realizations. But as far as any outward responsibility, no, I'll not do that. So this is a very, very important verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That Brahma is saying, I want to be instructed by you as to what is what, and this also brings forth another thing, that the knowledge of Krishna consciousness is potent. It is not simply some idle, like Prabhupada is using here the word speculation. So it's not just some idle speculation for the mind, something nice to think about, but has no practical result in the real world. No, Brahma, he wants to see that result. He wants to be empowered by the Lord's instruction so that he can do this work of creation. We find also in the Brahma Samhita that in the concluding verses, after the Govindam prayers, which end with verse 62, so there are some further verses where the Lord is speaking to Brahma directly, and he's telling him that by these Govindam verses, he has empowered the Lord with tejas, that means power, fiery energy, it is translated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So this fiery energy is actually the Chit Shakti, the spiritual energy of knowledge. And that Chit Shakti is reflected in this material world as the Rajoguna, and of course Lord Brahma is Rajoguna avatar. So the Lord Brahma is very concerned about that I'm going to be using this transformed energy, this transformed knowledge, this knowledge which is transformed into passionate energy for the purpose of creation. So he doesn't want to fall under the influence of that motive passion and be carried away by it. So he's very, very concerned about that here. And another nice thing is that this verse relates to the previous verse. Well, the previous verses, the Lord Brahma is asking specific questions. But yesterday, or I don't know if you heard this verse yesterday, whenever you had the class, in text 28, there's this very excellent example, this unabhir yaturnute, that the Lord plays with his energies just like a spider covers himself by his own energy. So this example of a spider, and the energy here means the spider's web, is very instructive for us. It appears repeatedly in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other Vedic literatures. And what's very significant about it is that this is a very, very precise analogy for explaining the Achincha Bheda Bheda Tattva philosophy. And this is another thing we're referring to Brahma Samhita, that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his purports there at the end, it may be, I think it's the very last purport in the Brahma Samhita, So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is specifically also mentioning that what the Lord instructs Brahmaji in at this time is the Achincha Beda Beda Tattva philosophy. You find in the purport that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is, without naming them, but he's referring to not only Mayavadi, other philosophies like Mayavadi philosophy and the philosophies of the six systems, like Vaisheshika and Nyaya and so on. He's not only referring to those, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is also, without giving the name, but he's describing the four Vaishnava Siddhantas of the four Sampradayas. The Vishishta Dvaita of Ramanuja, the Dvaita of Madhvacharya, the Shuddha Dvaita of Vishnu Swami, and the Dvaita of Nimbarkacharya. So if you read his Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's purport carefully, you'll see that each of these systems of philosophy is described, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying there openly that the Lord is instructing Brahma not to become bewildered by any of these philosophies, which is interesting because also these other Vaishnava philosophies are mentioned. So even those philosophies fall short of the actual absolute truth, which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says is Achincha Beda Beda Tattva, and this is actually the knowledge that the Lord gives Brahma in the very beginning, and it's by that knowledge that he is empowered to do the work of creation. And the proof of that, because this may seem like a very radical statement, and someone may worry if Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is being, too like pro-Gaudiya Vaishnava, and what about the other Vaishnava Sampradayas? They're also bona fide. Why is their philosophy kind of being put off to the side a bit? But the proof of that is right here in this Bhagavatam, because in the verse just previous to today's verse, this example of spider and spider's web is mentioned, and this is the illustration. In other words, it's a visual illustration for our mind, so that we can clearly understand what is Achincha Beda Abeda Tattva, the philosophy of simultaneous, inconceivable oneness and difference. So first of all, we'll just touch on this Achincha, inconceivability, because oftentimes I've heard this word, when it's used by devotees, it almost takes on the sense. The Mayavadis have a word called, that is Anirvichaniya, which means cannot be expressed in words. So sometimes devotees are saying, using this word Achincha, like, it's just so far away from us, something we can never understand, we can't talk about it, forget it. But Achincha means inconceivable in the sense that it is the power of the Lord, and therefore we cannot measure it by our little human means, our little human intelligence. We cannot measure it, but at the same time the power of the Lord is manifest and is working. So it's there. It's not something to be dismissed as something so far out. We cannot touch it. No, the Lord's potency is there, and as His devotees, if we are His devotees, then we must utilize that potency in our service. This is what Brahma is about to do. He wants to be empowered by Krishna so that he can do this great service of creation. So if we're thinking the Lord's power is Achincha in the sense of it cannot be thought about or talked about or any way understood, then what are we going to become? This is the Mayavadi conclusion. The Mayavadis have the same conception about Maya, the Lord's energy, that you can't talk about it. So therefore, their conclusion, practical conclusion of Mayavadi philosophy is you're just sitting down, meditating on the white light, and there's nothing to do. In fact, karma is maya. Karma is any kind of activity is not good. We should just become as much as possible free of any work whatsoever. So this, of course, is not acceptable from Vaishnava point of view. Vaishnavas want to be engaged in the Lord's service, and that means engaged in the Lord's energies. So, okay, so then I wanted to talk about this achincha. So consider the spider's web. In this example, the spider is representing the Lord, and the web is representing his energies, his creation. So spider's web is an amazing thing, you know. It has been analyzed by modern scientists. They have looked at this spider's web, this substance, and everywhere if you read about it, what scientists have to say, you always find this mentioned, that this spider's web, this material, is stronger proportionally than steel. You see? In other words, if you could have a piece of spider web as thick as a steel girder that they use in building a house, perhaps this, I don't know, this is a wooden house, but you know, concrete buildings will have steel girders to hold up the structure within the walls. So if you could get a strand of spider's web that would be as thick and as massive as a steel girder, the spider web would be harder. It would be stronger than even the steel. So this is amazing. This is inconceivable. You see, the scientists, therefore they're always mentioning this, because there's this humble little creature, a spider, and able from its own body to produce something that is stronger than the steel that human beings are using for their constructions. So spider is a better technician, a better technologist than the human being. And moreover, then the spider is creating these very fantastic constructions. These webs are, this is another thing that architects and these, designers are fascinated by spider web, because it's such a perfect kind of construction for what the spider wants to use it for. This is another inconceivable thing. Another inconceivable thing is the relationship of the spider to the web. In that this web, of course, it catches all insects. Any fly, any moth that flies into this web is immediately caught. But the spider is moving over the web. And actually, scientists have also studied this, and somehow they've learned, this is an interesting thing, that the spider is able to move freely on his web because of his knowledge. It's not just that there's something special about the spider, that he's not caught by his own web. He would be caught by his own web, but he knows exactly where to put his feet. And he does this very swiftly, so a spider can move, right across the web. So he has a knowledge or perception that is higher, superior to the other insects. They get entangled in the web because they're ignorant. You see, so this is the Lord's position. He's in perfect transcendental knowledge. And the Lord, not the spider, but the Lord, he can impart this knowledge to others. This is what Brahma is asking for. You see? So this is a chincha. This is a chincha. The Lord's power is inconceivable, but still we can be instructed by the Lord in how to use this energy. You see? Still, under the Lord's instruction, we can engage in his energy. So this is not a chincha in the Mayavadi sense of it's just so totally far out. We'll never understand it. There's no hope. So forget it. So just, meditate on Om, because nothing else is possible to do in this world. It's just too far out and, beyond this. So this is a chincha. And then Beda Abeda, oneness and difference. So the spider is one with his web, because the web comes from the spider's body. So, and the spider is the Lord. The web actually is an extension of his own awareness. The spider feels, he sits in his web, and he's very sensitive to Every part of the web, any fly is caught by the web in any corner, the spider immediately knows to go there. So spider is one with his web, but at the same time, the web is different from the spider. You see? This is logical. We cannot say there is an absolute going each way oneness between web and spider. We can say spider is one with his web, but we cannot say web is one with the spider. It's impossible, because the web doesn't grow 8 legs and go walking away. You see? The web is a web, stays in one place. The spider can go away. He's different. He can assert his difference. But from spider's point of view, is spinning the web, then the web is his extension. So it is, in that sense, one with him. So here in this example, then, we get a very nice insight into the meaning of Achincha Bheda Abheda Tattva. And it is by this knowledge that Brahmaji is empowered to do the great work of creation. And the purpose of this creation is to bring forth living entities who have been lying in ignorance for the whole duration of the inward breath of Mahavishnu. Or also, actually this creation is repeated every morning of Brahma's next day. So also the living entities, most of them during the night of Brahma, they're also merged again within the lotus stem under the water of the Garbhodaka Vishnu, Garbhodaka ocean. And so each morning then Brahma is bringing out most of these living entities. Their planets were submerged under the Garbhodak. So in the morning they come out again. The planets are again visible and needing population. So Brahma repopulates. So the living entities then, they come into this Jagrata, wakeful consciousness with bodies, senses, minds, intelligence. And this is an arrangement. Actually, the real purpose of it is so that these living entities will have an opportunity to render devotional service to the Lord, either consciously, purposefully, or by agyapta sukriti, by good fortune, good association, the opportunity to do it even though they don't really understand what it is, but this will be the beginning of their spiritual life. And this is the reason for the whole arrangement. Of course, initially in the infant stage of the living entity in this material world, he's trying to enjoy his senses. But the mature stage is that he rededicates himself to the service of the Lord, and when he becomes 100% engaged in devotional service with not even 1% or 1 fraction of a percent left, energy left for sense gratification, then he's eligible to go back home, back to Godhead, to leave the world of birth and death and enter the spiritual world. And that's the real purpose of creation. So this is therefore such a magnificent service that Brahma has. He's actually creating the preaching field. You see, the Lord himself will come in so many avatar forms throughout the whole duration of the universe. But that field of the Lord's own preaching is created by Brahma. So this is such an important service. Huh? How wonderful. The Lord and the Lord's devotees, they're all preaching within this manifestation of Brahma. Therefore the universe is called Brahma Anda. It is like an egg in shape, and it is predominated by Lord Brahma. Alright then. Are there any questions? Yes?
Remarks, if I understood before, right, this creative Shakti is like inside all of us, and sometimes in the development of devotees, like, should I say, it naturally comes up at the same time, related to the point of understanding then the philosophy and the Achincha Bheda Tattva. It's, while used, like, should I say, too early or something like that, may create also an havoc. So in order, like the development of the devotees and the like the training and education part, to encourage devotees to be like creative, to use their that kind of creativeness ability, is a little like same time, should I say, like it's quite a sensitive thing if I just have that kind of idea how to use, when to use that and like that. Could you elaborate a little?
Well, you know, this is just a matter of realization. As Prabhupada said, these types of questions or these types of issues, they require discrimination, and discrimination is the result of realization. So, a new devotee will generally not have a lot of realization, and therefore has to be directed. As we see Brahma, he's asking for that. He's asking for direction. He doesn't want to act just blindly or under his own speculation. And actually, yes, that is a clear and present danger, because here in this world we are surrounded by the modes, and you were talking about creative energy. So that as devotees, yes, we want to be creative for the Lord, but that, you know, that is bringing us very close to the mode of passion. As long as one is situated in realization of how to use the Lord's energies nicely, like the spider, you know, he moves through his web but never gets caught. So as long as one has that knowledge, then yes, and one should flourish in one's devotional service nicely. But if one doesn't have that realization, then one should be careful to have guidance, you see. Because if we just, yes, follow our own inclination, our own, you know, inspiration to do things, feeling creative, I want to do something, I want, like that, then it is very likely that we will stumble into the Rajaguna. Rajaguna means creative activity, but without transcendental knowledge. That's exactly what it means. Because transcendental knowledge that is there in the mode of goodness, but not in the mode of passion. So the effect of the mode of passion is that one gets entangled. So we should be useful to the mission of the Lord, and simultaneously, or I should say inseparable from that usefulness should be our cultivation, actually, of, I mean, we have to put it this way, finally, love of Godhead, love of Krishna. You see, to just try to be useful. You know, we so many times we've seen this throughout. I mean, all older devotees, we can look back and we see so many cases of persons who were wanted to be useful or creative, but really didn't have very much spiritual interest, you know. And there was even a kind of preaching that, yes, you know, you just work for Krishna and everything will come automatically. But everything comes as we desire it to come, you see. So that desire has to be nurtured. And that desire is, this is our, as that desire grows, that means our love of Krishna is growing. So if one is careful to, one is conscious of trying to develop love of Krishna, attraction to Krishna. Especially, to speak of this practically, when we're chanting is particularly when we're chanting in our daily kirtan and our japa. There is the opportunity then to work, so to speak, on the quality of our chanting and hearing. And this is expanding realization. And this is the process of developing love of Krishna. And so if we're careful about that, then, yes, as I said, realization is developing. And then we can use this realization in our seva, the useful part of our day. We can always resort to that realization, which means remembrance of Krishna. And in this way, we have a safe position, and from that safe position we can utilize energies. And as I said, this is very close to the mode of passion. When I was in Poland recently, I visited Indradumna Maharaj's tour at the so-called Polish Woodstock. So of Maharaj's tour throughout the year of Poland, this is the high point, the Woodstock festival. Several 100,000 people are there. So you see Maharaj's what he's got there. He's got all these tents. He has a Rath Yatra cart that's always like going around, and his stage program and prasadam distribution and preaching booths and bhajan kirtan booth, and one tent is even a temple. There are deities there for everyone to see in a constant kirtan. So it is such a vast endeavor actually. And he's got a fleet of trucks, big trucks, and so many devotees coming from, actually not many come from Poland really. That's kind of like one of the cynical comments that is often made. There's only a few Polish devotees for translation, but most of the devotees are coming from Russia or from the Ukraine. And and there's hundreds of devotees, so it's a big management, it's a big effort, and it's very, very close to the mode of passion. In other words, what I'm saying is that it's very easy for someone to get carried away in the midst of such kind of service and just go right into the mode of passion. And sometimes we even have to, sometimes that's unavoidable, sometimes it has to be done. But then the hope is there that one has been serious all along about one's chanting and the basics of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada used to call it our regular work, our regular daily program of Krishna consciousness. One will have been serious that even if, because of the need of the hour, then one actually really becomes passionate, then still one can go back to the safe position. But if one's personal sadhana is very poor, if one is always, if one is always just paying attention to this heavy-duty work, and just in between, fumbling out some rounds, while he's busy, looking and chanting at the same time, giving orders, hey, you have to do this, and this way he's, then he's going to be totally engulfed by the mode of passion and all of the unwanted aspects of the mode of passion will infect him, and that means the end of spiritual life. Right there, that's the end. Spiritual life we can maintain in the mode of goodness, but if we want to just be in the mode of passion, then we can't have spiritual life. Sometimes we may have to dip into the mode of passion because of some particular circumstance, but we quickly want to pull out again. And we should be in the mode of goodness. That should be our regular situation. So, anyway, some efforts in the mode of goodness, they're right on the edge of the mode of passion. These big kinds of, I suppose what you're doing, this festival in India, sometimes goes in that direction too. But we should be ourselves in the mode of goodness, at least mode of goodness. Actually, we should be coming to the Turiya state above the modes. But anyway, mode of goodness at least. And in that mode of goodness, cultivating the remembrance of Krishna. So that's our safe position. So it's this knowledge, knowledge simply meaning or realization simply meaning the steady remembrance of Krishna. That's what it means. It may not be some very emotional type of remembrance, but at least a philosophical understanding. At least that is there. Then you see that knowledge is empowering us to work for Krishna in this world, and at the same time not be contaminated by the mode of passion. And that knowledge is the result of careful cultivation of Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting, hearing this class and reading Prabhupada's books. That's how we get that knowledge. Yes?
Maharaj, based on what you said just now, so what is the relationship between chanting and then book distribution? That we are chanting our rounds, but should we, if we have some extra time, try to just distribute books, or maybe try to concentrate more on the chanting of the holy names?
Well, I don't think that there can be one same answer for everyone. This is again the same thing, it's a question of discrimination. In other words, each devotee, there's some point in our devotional service when you're taking more responsibility, like book distribution, to go out and distribute books. This is not actually for a neophyte to do. I mean, by neophyte I mean someone who's hardly knows even how to control his own senses. So this, of course, they used to do this in the ISKCON of old. Bhakta walks in the door, put a book bag on him, push him out on the street. But this is not very good, because he hasn't, he's not equipped to be out there, in the ocean of lower modes of nature. Can be very, very easily misled. So book distribution is for someone who's learned the basics of Krishna consciousness and has shown that he can be depended upon in going out among the karmis and preaching, and will maintain his consciousness out there. So that type of devotee can do this service, and so anyone who's in that sort of position where he has a responsibility entrusted to him, that we're not, temple commander's not going to be behind the tree watching you, what you're doing. So we trust you to go out and distribute books and not be in Maya. So anyone who has that sort of responsibility, then there must be realization. There must be, he must discriminate on his own about, like your question is, how much should we distribute, or as opposed to if there's an opportunity to do more chanting. That is, I would say, that is a question of personal discrimination of that devotee, depending on his realization. So, if that devotee feels that that for me to, go on regularly, because in our service we should not be like the falling star, like these that you see at the night. Sometimes they dropping out of outer space, and they make a big light for a few seconds, and everyone, wow, far out, and then it's gone. We don't want to be like that. We want to be, a fixed star, that you see every night. Or moon is better. Prabhupada said, what's the use of so many stars if there's one moon? So, but anyway, Prabhupada also said, at least be a star. He actually said that. Because a star is always there, at least. So therefore we have the responsibility to consider for ourselves, what do I need in order to be able to continue on with this service regularly, day after day after day. So then if the answer is I should, chant japa when there's opportunity, then one should do that, because by doing that he's able to go out every day and distribute books. Someone else who's just more spiritually fired up, to distribute books, then his answer will be, if there's more time, I'll distribute more books. And I, my japas that I do in the morning is sufficient for me. I just really like, get a real nectarian taste from getting more books out. So that's valid for him too. And if the only test it'll just be over time, just to see who is. That will be the proof that if someone remains steady in one service year after year, then he must be, what he's doing must be right. No? Oh, okay. Anything else? Okay then, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhagavatam ki jai, Guru.
Hari Om.